Yeah, those guys are sweet.
Hell yeah. Got the sweet ass arms.
They are. Yeah, I haven't showed mine off. Although
you got to keep those hidden while I have mine out. I don't want to look bad.
I just want to know how many shirts that you have hulked through on in all your wardrobe. Because number 3 happened to me yesterday, which
0.
is super douchey. I know it is.
What? Why don't you just buy the right size?
I do buy the right size. The problem is
you buy them during running season, don't you?
Well, so you wear a lot, like you wear the same brand that I do, Express. Yeah. You wear a lot of Express, right? Shirts wise. Yeah. Okay. So if you buy a double XL, it's fine and it fits just fine. But then, during lifting season,
you go double XL even in running season?
Yeah. And then, it's mainly my back. My back gets a little too big.
So you need to do this move?
Yeah. And by the way, folks, we know this is the douchiest conversation on planet Earth. Yeah. Bar none. Yeah. The worst conversation on planet Earth.
Tune into your local douchebags. Mason Jeff, Guerrilla Social Workers.
And then if you saw the truck I drove, like you'd know. It fits the profile. Oh, and I got spiky hair? Oh, weird. Yeah. Okay. You should see the tattoos. Okay. It all fits. It all moves in the same direction.
Yeah. But stereotypes exist for a reason.
Yeah. But no, they have I showed you that one website that it's called Oxcloth?
Yeah.
Ever seen that? Yeah. So that one plugged to Oxcloth too, and they've gotten way better too about because it's a UK company, and they ship to so you like send them in your measurements, like you measure your biceps and your chest and everything, and you send it in, and then they send you a customized shirt. That it's weird because it has like 2 seams on the back, so you can like full range of motion and it won't rip or anything. But I mean, like that's the thing when your shirts get a little bit more, you button up shirt, you spend some money on it. Like you don't. I mean, obviously, it's for sure worth it. And then I wear now when I'm smaller, they look dumb. I feel like I'm drowning in them. But during the right season, they're really cool. Yeah. It used to be though. That website was tricky because you would pay more to send it back than you would to get it.
Oh,
like
funny.
Sending it back. Now they have free returns. So Oxcloth.
You probably know about barbell jeans.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Those are super comfy.
Yeah. Those are like lifting jeans too. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I can do karate in them.
Do you go to the All Valley tournament?
Yeah.
Exactly. Did you know there wasn't an All Valley tournament until the Karate Kid, and now there is an All Valley
exists?
Oh yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
That show's awesome.
So,
yeah, man. Well, I'm glad we got this in because I gotta go murder some animals next week.
Word.
So yeah, hopefully I'll get some jerky. I'm not murdering animals. I'm going hunting.
Yeah,
AKA, I just call it a spade a spade.
Yeah, you're murdering animals.
I love it when like you use, what is that, a euphemism? When you use like a lighter description of something horrible that you're doing. Okay, like dressing the animal. Like, oh. You gut it and you cut it.
That's a good example.
You cut it open from its butthole to its mouth, and then you pull all its guts out. Is that what you're talking about? Dressing?
Well, what about if you injure the elk and you need to dispatch it?
Yeah, what do they call that?
Yeah,
dispatching.
Yeah, you got to dispatch the elk.
Dispatch.
Yeah.
I've never heard dispatch. Yeah, no,
just means kill. That way they use.
I know. Yeah, but not with hunting, right?
No, they usually use it with people.
Oh,
need to dispatch the threat.
Yeah, that's a good term. Well, so this is our final rendition.
We need to make this the final rendition. We gotta just finish strong, man.
It's weird because we're at 59 minutes in the documentary, and there's 46 minutes left. And you think it's tough though, because it's like you want to jump in and comment on this
every time.
Yeah. So what I think we'll do is periodically we'll pause for what I've kind of adjusted it. What I'd say we do is comment over their dialogue at certain points, not stop it and let it kind of roll. Okay. So you got to have some natural jump in points.
Sure.
Right?
All right.
Remember, folks, we're getting used to this just like you are. So let's cool it with the criticism here, or criticize like you say whatever you want. So
have they even said anything?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I finally fixed the comments so we can respond to it. Before, like there was a block there that we couldn't.
So we can stop getting bullied by our listeners.
Yeah, they just post without a response, and then they think, serve him.
Got him.
He's too afraid to even respond to me.
He's ashamed into silence.
That's right. No, so let's okay, we'll get into this. And then we left off, if you don't remember, this gentleman, he was talking about being homeless and he was riding a bus, and I think that's as far as we got. So this was kind of, again, they were talking about, difficulties in finding a home that would actually rent to you in Miami-Dade County, and what it took to kind of get by. And there was a bunch of people, like a bunch of these dudes who just went and slept at this like one location.
That's right.
He was like in a sleeping bag or whatever.
All right.
That's where we left off.
Up to speed.
Every morning I wake up on the ground because my curfew was from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m.
Curfew for where? Curfew to stay indoors?
Right. Yeah,
So at 6 a.m. I would get up off the ground, go to the bus stop, travel 2.5 hours down to the job where I work at.
2.5 hours on a bus ride?
That's
He was homeless and had no shelter. He actually found a job at a car wash about 50 miles from where his encampment was.
Coming back, this particular day, the bus was late. I called my probation officer.
He freaks out and calls his probation officer and tells her he was a couple of minutes late. When he finally gets back, it turns out he was only 8 minutes late. He was supposed to be there at 10:05. He gets there at 10:13.
To his non-existent home.
For the violation in terms of
the PO's
home
office.
story. Because I was 8.5 minutes late for my 10 o'clock curfew, I got sentenced to 4 years in prison.
He had not committed
Is that the whole
crime.
story?
He was simply 8 minutes late. My position was that this was a draconian application of the law, that judges are required to exercise a little bit of humanity and some common sense. And clearly, being 8 minutes late doesn't justify throwing someone in prison for 4 years. And they rejected the arguments of the defense.
Wow. If that's
The
accurate,
document
that's
says,
crazy.
You lose, and we're not going to tell you why. That's it. Case closed.
Curfew for what?
Many of the people who go back to prison are going back on technical
Curfew.
violations.
Curfew to
There could
be
upwards
in the
of
parking
200
lot.
different rules that they have to follow.
Oh, this is important.
Misstep is taken as grounds for sending them back to prison.
No camera.
I've been violated 3 times. My first violation, they said it took me too long to find suitable housing. I won it on appeal, but I still did 3.5 years
Damn.
before they overturned it. The second one was for being 8 minutes late. 4 more years of my life in prison. And my third one was for missing 1 class.
If we're getting the full
I got
story, that's
7 months
crazy.
because that was all the time they could still give me. Oh, it's been 20 years, this whole thing. Because of the laws, I can't live with the family.
Man.
The way the system is set up, I don't think it's so much a matter of public safety as it is a matter of setting up all of these traps for these people to fall into so they can reincarcerate them.
There's a recent Department of Corrections study out of California that studied all of the sex offenders who were released. What they found was for every 100 sex offenders released, 70 were sent back to prison. But of those 70 who were sent back to prison, only 1 of the 70 was convicted of a new sex.
Oh, okay.
That's actually really important. I think a lot of people assume, like they'll see statistics, right? And you hear that. So essentially 70% of the offenders are going back to prison, right? And without any context, like there was a piece right here before this. Let me see if I can scroll back a little bit. Let me
Department of
just stop
Corrections
right
study
where
out
it
of
is.
California that studied all
this is a good pie chart right here. So you look at this of everybody who's going back into so of those 70% that are going back, 88% were back on parole violations, right? And that's a huge N size too. Look at that N size. 6,218. And only 1.8% of that 6,000 came back on a new sex crime.
Those aren't too dissimilar from our stats in Utah from that study we reference all the time.
Right.
Was it 56% PV, 0.8% new reoffense?
Yeah, less than 1% new sex offense. And a new non-sex crime, ours was a little bit higher. I think ours was 12% for a new non-sex crime. Theirs is 7.3%. 3% was failure to register as a sex offender, which they don't necessarily categorize as a new sex offense. And then 1.8% is a new sex crime. So the only thing I'd say is yes, they are going back in like big numbers, right?
Is this nationwide?
No, this was out of California.
Okay.
Yeah, but I can't remember if he did this for everywhere, but this was just for California. But either way, though, those numbers are really similar to Utah too. Yeah. So I would say that it's, obviously can't extrapolate to the entire United States, but in some of the statistics that we've looked at in terms of the nationwide ones through the Federal Bureau Bureau of Justice Assistance, they say that those numbers are pretty consistent as well.
Yeah.
So the thing I'd say is for people to know watching this, I mean, like, yes, they are going back, and you could, I think, an argument could be made that those parole violations, had they not happened, it could have led to a sex offense. So perhaps that they were preventing a sex offense. So maybe somebody was moving in a direction that was going towards that. But often what we have seen, and I think Utah's gotten way better about this, particularly with the officers that we work with, the agents that we work with. I don't see a lot of knee-jerk reactions anymore, sending dudes back to prison. And certainly the federal United States Probation Office, we don't see a whole lot of that either. And I think they do a pretty good job of those things. But that's just contextually, everybody needs to understand these are not new sex offenses. That's usually completely out of the norm. The reason why they're going back to prison is because of this. So their recidivism rate is incredibly high, but it's due to parole violations.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Offenders who were released. What they found was for every 100 sex offenders released, 70 were sent back to prison. But of those 70 who were sent back to prison, only one of the 70 was convicted of a new sex crime. 5 were detected committing a new non-sex crime. And 90% of those were returned to prison for a technical violation.
Wow.
For judges that have any discretion at all, there's no question that if you exercise that discretion, because you see distinctions in the group of sex offenders, the reaction would be extraordinary. So you err on the side of punishment. And that's what we've all been doing for 20, 30 years now. So we've simply created a punishment machine, an endless punishment machine.
It goes back to control. We need to have different pieces in place that make it much easier for law enforcement officers to put these individuals back in prison. Because it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. It's not if they reoffend, it's when will they reoffend. And I don't want to take that chance.
Normally, I would let the daughter go first, but first up, I think we'll have Ron Book, because I knew that she would want her daddy to go first. Ron?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I will be brief.
We cannot allow guilty sexual predators to walk free. I know, you know, and the Supreme Court knows the time has come to empower children who are being victimized. This year is one of the most aggressive years that we've ever had.
Video voyeurism and sexting and porno, we've been involved in all those efforts.
Senator Benedicto, you recognize the clause.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask that
why ever let him out then?
And give voice to the concerns and fears of children across the state and allow them to bring their abusers to justice.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Lock the board
like,
now,
I mean,
32 yeas.
it seems like it would cost much more money and put more strain on the citizenry to let them out and then put them back in.
So just
Making
keep them
Florida
in.
Right.
We'll be there. Yeah.
for sexual predators.
Having all 4 bills that you've spent months putting together taken up as the first act on the first day of this legislative session, that's a big deal.
Well, there's a lot of people willing to build more prisons and just to
place in the country for
incarcerate and.
Lots of what we have done affects categories of sexual assault other than children. While I may have this like deep-seated stab you in the heart, kill you for committing a crime against a kid, I find sexual abuse as a whole abhorrent, unacceptable, punishable. I'm sorry, I'd put them away.
Good, me too. Not
Thanks
forever,
to Ron
though.
and Lauren book,
That's the
Florida
only
is now
disagreement.
the only state in America that has a 50-year mandatory minimum.
They will spend 50 years in prison if they sexually assault a child.
You get in trouble.
That's like the minimum sentence.
My daughter's favorite issue this year. Now on your driver's license, there'll be a notation, you are a sexual predator.
No, I don't think there's any legislator really that has been against these. I haven't heard anybody say, yeah, I really don't like these bills. Politically, it would be hard to do. Politically, it would be hard to do.
Yeah, it's unpopular to
make Florida
fight back
safe.
against these things.
And we know if we can make Florida safe, then we know that the entire country has a blueprint for the rest of the states in the union.
We've had to explain ourselves just making this podcast.
Filed this session to toughen up laws. Legislators hope to have their new law in place as early as next month.
A growing number of cities have bans on sex offenders offering candy at their door.
It's going to require convicted sex offenders to put fluorescent green license plates on their car.
The bill that would make those
What
sex
difference would that make?
have to get surgically
Oh,
castrated
castration
before they
bill
leave
proposed.
prison.
Wow.
They have marked this child for life, and I feel like that the punishments are fit the crime.
Governor Cuomo has signed legislation that prohibits registered sex offenders from becoming firefighters.
I had a bill say that if you were a sex offender, you
John Flanagan
drive an ice cream truck. A lot of these folks are repeat offenders. If it was something where you said 95% of the people who commit these types of acts never do it again, different story.
Well, you can't find a more hot and button issue than especially pedophiles. The great fear among politicians is being thought of as soft on crime. The sentiment has been to err on the side of safety, even though maybe the net has been cast too wide.
It's bipartisan support, almost unanimously, overwhelming support. There is no activity of any kind in any way to somehow water these laws down or to soften them. Not in this building.
This is in McLeod, Oklahoma.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what's said, just the implementation of it and the
A bill that passed
duration.
the State House of Representatives on Monday would prohibit sex offenders from visiting any recreational park in Oklahoma. State Representative Josh Cockcroft authored the legislation to
That dude
include
12?
any neighborhood, county, or
He
state
does
park
look
as
really
off
young.
limits
Yeah.
to habitual or aggravated sex offenders.
Oh. The day before the park ban goes into event, October 31st, and it's showing our gal that was previously featured.
I'm sorry.
She's there at the park with her kids. Oh no. She's telling her kids she can't take them to the park anymore. Oh.
You're the best daughter in the whole world.
Yeah, she took it good. Cute little girl.
Yeah.
I'm very afraid of losing everything that I have now. I don't have tons, but what I have is everything to me.
We got to go to the park.
You know, I wonder if there's like exceptions to this, you know, like PO discretion allows them to do some of these things. Like they're allowed. If they're
Certainly
PO.
is the case here.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
This year, in this package of bills, Senate Bill 1666, automatically, upon conviction as a sexual predator, you lose your parental rights to your kids.
Whoa.
See you later. Adios. Have a good life on your own.
I don't know about that one.
Because you're not going to have any relationships with your kids.
It's too blanket.
Whether your crime was against your kids or not, you shouldn't have that right to be that close to your kids.
Wow.
Terminating the
because they have a hardwire problem. A pedophile sees that picture of that 3-month-old or that 5-year-old or the 12-year-old, and they get stimulated.
Perhaps.
And they want to go have sex. They want to go have sex.
What about the kid?
That little child.
Pause that real quick.
Yeah.
What about the child of the sex offender that now is victimized by the legal system? He loses his mom or his dad as a result of this rule that gets put into place that might have nothing to do with protecting him. There's plenty of cases where somebody picks up a sex offense and for whatever reason, it's pretty damn low risk that the kid would be a victim of his own parent. And this is just a carte blanche decision made that now strips this kid from being able to even have a choice in his father or mother being a parent. That's big time overreach.
Well, right. And I think it's because of what he was saying. He said, if if a pedophile looks at those pictures, and so what the distinction is they're making a synonymous comparison between pedophile and sex offenders. Like in
right.
What Book is kind of saying is that there's not really a difference. Sex offenders and, pedophiles there. And I guess, what is it? All pedophiles are sex offenders, but not all sex offenders are pedophiles is a good way of looking at it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, and not to mention, I mean, there's diagnostic criteria to reach that point.
Yeah.
And so for sure, I mean, I think about, a client we worked with, and he had a really hard time with exhibitionism. It was only ever against adults, though. And, essentially this was him pulling his penis out and showing it to an adult female. And really his arousal was based on her surprise and her reaction to it, right? And it was almost like compulsive, like very similar to like addictive, to where he would talk to me about it and he would become obsessed with it and kind of develop, I don't know, not the equivalent of like a drug craving, but similar to that, to the degree that he felt like he had to do it. Very obsessive, very compulsive type of behavior. Knew it was bad, but would find himself doing it anyway. I don't know. I mean, based on his previous behaviors and I just wouldn't see him being a risk. He didn't have any children, fortunately for him, I guess. But even if he did, there was never anything in his profile that would indicate he's a risk to children.
I know who you're talking about, and that's a perfect example of what my objection was to that.
Right, yeah. Right. And I mean, he went back on violations due to new offenses, which probably were in his best interest. Like, that's one thing that you and I would probably agree on is, look, if you're reoffending in the community, sometimes a period of incarceration to kind of really be in a controlled environment to address this to the degree that you don't. I mean, if you continually commit offenses, eventually they're going to give you what is the equivalent of a life sentence to the degree that you're never going to get out, right? And so sometimes that's a hard decision on our end, but we will recommend that like, reincarceration is probably best for this guy, not because I want him punished, but because I'm saying, look, devoid of a controlled environment, he's going to find himself in even more trouble and find himself further and deeper involved in the criminal justice system. So this is probably the most ethical decision for him. He's demonstrating an acuity for a higher level of care.
It's a tough sell to get clients to see it that way, but you're 100% right.
Right. I mean, I never look to punish clients, but that's just how it is. Right. So
God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things, wisdom to know the difference.
Is this a group therapy session?
A
10?
For sex offenders?
The wisdom to know what we can change.
Co-ed?
No, what I've learned in the last 3.5 years of therapy is just astonishing. I've been attracted to a particular
type of young girl ever since I was around 8 years old, when I witnessed my 2 older cousins having sex in the bed with me on an overnight visit from out of town. And she became the fantasy, and she was around 8 or 9 years old. And I've always been attracted to that age range since. The counselors make no bones
group
about
therapy
it.
session in a tent.
This is not something you
park.
cure. It's something you learn to manage. It's certainly possible that I would have never offended had I known what I know now and had I had the kind of treatment I've had since my release.
We know from research that sex offenders who receive treatment do reoffend at lower rates than those who don't get treatment.
Thank you.
Correct.
Is treatment perfect? No, but neither are most medical interventions.
Yeah, speak for yourself.
People die after receiving chemotherapy, and we don't say, well, we're not going to treat cancer.
This is a very candid statement. I've told the group that I'm a participant in, and to my counselor, if you really knew sometimes what went on in my mind, you would lock me up and throw away the key.
But should we do that?
No, I'm not a harm to anyone. But those thoughts occur in my mind from time to time.
That's honest.
What I've learned in counseling and group is how to manage them. And through that, I get some modicum of a peace of mind.
That takes some balls to say.
And the knowledge that I'm not a danger.
In a documentary.
Well, see, and for most people, that's just not good enough, though.
I know.
Like, they want the absence
Everybody
of those
wants
thoughts,
a risk-free
which is not
society,
realistic.
But the thing about these sex offender laws is that they focus with laser sharpness on a particular kind of risk. And it is the risk of recidivist sexual violence. Now, what recidivist sexual violence means, the definition is a person who's been convicted of sex crime who then commits another sex crime. That's recidivist violence. Now, the public thinks that that is a huge number. The public thinks that almost 100% of sex offenders who are released from prison go off and do it again. One of the most comprehensive studies of recidivism was done by the US Department of Justice. They followed every single sex offender released from about 15 states. It was almost 10,000 people. They followed them for 3 years to determine who got rearrested or reconvicted for another sex offense. That study found
9,691
recidivism rate among those almost 10,000 sex offenders of 3.5%.
3.5% of the 10,000.
There is a huge disparity between the public's perception of sex offenders and the
Val
truth,
Jonas.
the empirical, scientific,
I'm glad they're bringing this up.
actuarial truth
this is
about
good.
sex offenders.
The recidivism of sex offenders has been studied over and over and over again. It's been studied by the federal government, Bureau of Justice Statistics, state departments of corrections. The Connecticut Department of Corrections broke out the various measures of recidivism over 5 years. So using the loosest measure of recidivism, 3.6% of the sex offenders were arrested or charged with a new crime over 5 years.
Okay.
The next most narrow definition of recidivism, a conviction of a new sex offense, found 2.7%. And then using the strictest definition of recidivism, return to prison to serve a sentence for a new sex crime. That was
Did it say if they'd completed treatment?
There's a study in Maine that
was that a
had
variable?
a rearrest rate of 3.9%.
They didn't mention that, I don't think.
A Nebraska
I would assume this is
found
all
a 2-year
post-treatment.
recidivism rate of 1.7%. 1 year recidivism, 0.6%.
Of all the sex offenders going back into the community, you're saying none of them
These
went through,
studies
you know what I mean?
are
They'd
quite
have to go through
consistent.
treatment. So Alaska 3.4%, Arizona 2.3%, Delaware 3.8%.
New Mexico was 1.8.
Yeah. The low reoffense rate appears to be contradict conventional wisdom that sex offenders have very high sexual violence
that
recidivism.
underlies all of these laws, that sex offenders are extremely highly likely to reoffend.
Microchip
This is a
sex
myth.
offenders?
It's a total myth. There are two different worlds here. One is the world of the politicians. And in that world, we are identifying the most highly dangerous, and these people have hugely high recidivism rates. And then there's the world of science. And those two worlds do not meet.
They don't even like each other.
Was microchip sex offenders a
Supreme
hashtag?
Court had its own role
Just a sign,
in
just a
perpetrating
billboard.
this myth.
The two most well-known Supreme Court cases on sex offenders are a case called McCoon and another case called Smith.
Professor UC
they
Berkeley.
report that the sex offender registry and other things that are imposed on sex offenders are justified by the fact that they have a frightening and high reoffense rate. As high as 80% of sex offenders reoffend. And that's a frightening and high rate. And I would agree to that. If 80% of sex offenders reoffend upon release, that would be frightening and certainly very high. And in explaining this frightening and high reoffense rate, Justice Kennedy made reference to a manual published by the United States Department of Justice. The Justice Department manual cites only one thing, an article in Psychology Today, a mass market magazine from 1986. That article in Psychology Today is written by a fellow who's a rehabilitation counselor. That's his only degree. He's not an academic. He's not an expert in reoffense statistics. It's just his salesmanship on his
Freeman
counseling.
Longo?
Yeah.
Well, you got to
People who don't take his therapy, they'll reoffend as high as 80%.
I wonder what he would say about that article now.
It has nothing in it that it cites. There's no doubt that the statements about reoffense rates are wrong. They're just, as a matter of social science fact, those statements are wrong.
At this point, the phrase frightening and high has been cited in close to 100 cases. Legislatures routinely recite it in their preambles to their legislation. Wow. They cite the U.S. Supreme Court, which rested its assumptions on nothing.
So for those of you who don't know, the Psychology Today is like it's kind of like I don't know.
Good housekeeping.
Yeah, something like that. Like, I mean, I'm not going to suggest that there's only non-reputable publications on there.
It's just not an academic journal necessarily.
No, I mean, we pay, I don't know how much money to just have our agency listed on there so people can find us. It's kind of,
got some magazines in our lobby.
Yeah, it's like a Newsweek.
There you go.
Is that fair enough to say?
Yeah,
I mean,
Newsweek.
Newsweek versus the Journal of Substance Use. Like, it's like not an academic journal, so to speak. Yeah. So, yeah, gosh, that's the only one
Longo.
Well, back in
I'd be curious what he would say about that now.
Back in 1980, though, I mean, that was kind of the heyday of like really confrontational and degrading and shame-based type of treatment stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and I mean, we were only going based off of information that we had at the time, but obviously the science has evolved, and who knows? I mean, I saw on there though, there was one word that I don't know if you caught it. It said 80% of untreated sex offenders.
Oh,
did you see that?
No.
So that's what they're referring to. So this 80%, that was one caption, 80% of untreated sex offenders, which back then, depending on the number of where this was and the number of clients that they were paying attention to, that could very well be an accurate statistic. But especially based on the therapy back then and the sentences back then. But nowadays it's just way different. So that even, you're talking about untreated sex offenders versus treated, and also the, so the frightening and high, 80% is exceptionally high. That is scary. And it's, again, based on everything, it's not untrue that they're returning to prison. They are. So if you just want to blanket say, they recidivate and go back to prison. Well, yeah, of course they do, based on these things.
On nothing. You wouldn't make any decision affecting your life on the basis of things like that.
100 judicial opinions that uphold laws that say, yes, you can put this person on the registry. Yes,
wow,
someone
like
on the
statement,
registry cannot go to a library, cannot Go to a park in Florida, they can't live anywhere. In the city of Miami,
You're throwing thousands of people onto the streets, out of their houses, out of school, wrecking their marriages, wrecking any prospect they may possibly ever have, reintegration into the community based on frightening and high, decades of recidivism, 80%, which came from nothing.
And you ever got a shoe shine?
Where in the heck do they get the success rate?
Nah. Sometime in my life, you
Is
gotta
that
get.
remotely tied to anything verifiable?
Oh, this will be good to see what happens when confronted with science, like how he handles that. I'm sure he's got an answer.
Okay. Thanks for making sure you
Right?
keep my feet looking good, my friend.
I have no idea how he's going to answer. I can't imagine he changes his mind.
I occasionally force people that I know to read some of the studies that I've read. And sometimes they read them and they put them aside and they just say, I don't believe it, just like Mr. Book.
Or I don't care. Because the argument could be, it doesn't matter. Look at the harm that
I
they
don't
caused.
really care what the critics say.
Here we go.
Because what they say is, I don't have any statistics. I suggest to you, their statistics are made up and they're phony baloney.
Fake news.
They make it look like it's something other than it is. It's underreported because people don't report sex crimes.
True.
Because they're embarrassed,
That is
they're
true.
ashamed, they're intimidated, they're threatened, their lives have been threatened, just like my daughter's life was threatened.
He's right. That's true.
Yeah, but
it's not the whole picture, but it's a variable.
If you're not a victim
He's
of
not
sexual
wrong.
abuse,
He's just over-exaggerating
just
it.
don't have a clue. And if you weren't a parent of a child who's been sexually abused, don't tell me about leniency. Don't tell me about compassion. Don't tell me about what rights your kid should have or shouldn't have. Get out of my face. Get out of my world. Get out of my everything.
I don't think he's budging.
No, but at the same time, like, look at this. So I don't disagree with what he's even saying here. If you're not a parent of a victim, don't tell me. I agree with that. Like, nobody should tell you how to feel or that you should have compassion. But you shouldn't be in positions of making big time decisions, though. You shouldn't be in positions of influence to make laws like this. That's the difference there.
People that make those decisions should be making it based off evidence
and objectively, right? And yeah, I mean, yes, all crimes are underreported, okay? But we can only base our decisions off the evidence that we have. You can't just assume that it's so underreported that, like, so then at what rate are sex crimes happening? Like so underreported that it's that dramatic?
If you were going to make the case that sex crimes are so underreported that it's like it renders the available research invalid, you've now made a claim, which means that you now have to provide evidence to justify that claim.
Right.
And that hasn't been done.
But you're not relying on that. You're relying on emotional empathy of individuals who are like looking at this and saying, oh yeah, why would we care for them? And look at the harm that this has caused his daughter and
that's
his
what
family.
wins.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, walk in my shoes.
There it is.
There was this rally. Sex offenders were trying to change the laws related to the registry.
Uh-oh.
I didn't really understand a whole lot of it, but I want to
Start
learn.
repealing
I mean,
myth-based
obviously,
sex
I was on
offender
defense
registry.
mode,
Oh, no.
and I'm like, we're going to take on these sex offenders.
Oh, this is the lady that tracks people down, right?
There was families who were fighting for their loved ones because of the effect it was having on them. It's not fair. My heart broke for some of these family members because they truly loved the sex offender that was in their life. The crime that
Or
sex offender
it's a
did
person.
is unforgivable. But the domino effect on that side, that was an eye-opener for me. At one time, I felt like I was on the real good side of the law because I was working with law enforcement to get the bad guy off the street.
Oh yeah, Predator Patrol.
And now all of a sudden, I'm on this side. I'm on the criminal side.
Uh-oh.
Now my son is a criminal.
Oh.
And now my son is getting in trouble. And now we're looked at differently It's very classic for
Little
children
pot
who have
calling
been
the kettle
molested.
black.
My little happy son had a demonic seed planted in him after he was kidnapped and molested. His world stopped after this happened. He got hooked on drugs and he went to a drug dealer's house. And my son shot a gun to try to save his best friend.
Whoa.
He ended up getting 25 years. There are people that I became very close with within the judicial system, and I have the utmost respect for them. And when my son got charged with these crimes, I wanted so bad to go and beg them to help me, but I knew my son did something wrong, and I knew they had to do their job. So I couldn't go ask something that was unreasonable. We had to just face it and do what we had to do. So now I am on the other side, and I'm going to be as realistic as possible. I don't want to be a vigilante. I've learned, there were times where I got very angry with the predators and things that were going on, and I didn't understand it. But today I understand it. I get it.
Damn.
Well, yeah, and who's to say that
The bizarreness of what
the
happened.
people that committed sex offenses,
still
or even the
haunting.
person who molested her kid, didn't have his own set of trauma?
I think she maybe just realized that.
In the middle of nowhere, there's like 15 houses up here.
I think she realizes that.
It's going back to Jacob.
You're actually
Wetterman's
more
mom.
likely to get struck by lightning than to get abducted, But with abduction and sexual assault, there's such tremendous fear that it steers the direction of the conversation. I'm often afraid to talk about this topic, knowing that there are a lot of other victims who've gone through the same thing and who don't see eye to eye with me. I've been doing this 26 years, and I've learned a lot. And my attitude has changed. At the beginning, this was a tool for law enforcement. Now it's a punishment. I just think we need to have a critical eye and keep what's good and fight for what's missing.
The consensus of the research indicates that public notification and public sex offender registries have not resulted in a decrease in sexual crimes over the years.
Why would they? It makes no sense. Like, just use common sense. Why would that work? Right. I mean, I know it's not going anywhere. I'm just saying, just use some common sense.
We've
Why would that
created a
prevent
system
something?
that has taken on a life of its own.
Megan's law
It's
showed
less
no
effective than
demonstrable
we'd hoped it
effect.
would be.
Wait a minute. What'd that say? Go back.
A system that has taken on a life of its own.
Megan's law showed no demonstrable effect in reducing sexual
It's
reoffenses.
less effective than we'd hoped
Megan's
it
law
would
has
be.
no effect on reducing the number of victims involved in sexual offenses.
Are we
Given the lack
simply
of demonstrated effect
punishing
of Megan's
people,
law, sex offenses,
or
the growing
are we
costs
really
may
trying
not be
to do
justifiable.
something effective that's going to change the way our society deals with sexual assault?
What has happened is our policy has gone off in the wrong direction.
There is growing concern among experts that the super draconian responses to sexual crimes can actually have the perverse effect of depressing the reporting of sex offending.
Really?
Particularly within family
Rewind
settings.
Yeah.
Depressing the reporting
One
of that the super draconian responses to sexual crimes can actually have the perverse effect of depressing the reporting of sex offending. Particularly within family settings.
Yeah, I'm not going to turn your dad in.
People
You don't want him to go to
forget
prison forever.
the goal.
Yeah.
We want them to never offend again. So to do that, we should be giving them treatment, and then they need a place to live, they need a job, they need social support, continued treatment, and we take all of those away one by one.
This is Jacob Wetterling's mom saying this.
She's on point. He right.
I didn't want my kids to know that I was homeless. They found out.
Actually, I looked you up online and I found you on the registry. Honestly, I was the happiest person on the planet when I found that picture of you. I never forgot you. I never stopped loving you. I'm just happy I found you.
This is only the second Father's Day that me spent time. The first time we spent time together, I called it.
Did he expirate his sentence? Is that what's going on?
And went away for the 4 years.
This was the guy that was violated a bunch of times and sent back.
If they said, I missed that, if they said that he got it expirated. Just out on parole, maybe?
Yeah. What? I don't know.
I'm free.
Oh, no, he's
but
free.
It don't
He's
take
done.
away the scars. I still got my own nightmares. Nobody know my story. Nobody know about the little boy that was raised on 21st Avenue in Tampa, Florida. And every time his baby sister went in the hospital, his daddy stuck his dick in his mouth.
Whoa.
Sorry I had to say it that way, but that's the truth. I walk around every day of my life with two hurts. One, I was a molested child and lived it with that all my life. Second, I missed and touched a child and don't even know how. And it hurts me every day of my life because I don't know where that came from. And nobody gave a damn what was going on with me when I was a kid. I really don't want to live no more. I don't want nothing to do with society. I trusted this great country we call America, and it screwed me, not only as an adult, but as a kid, too.
Yeah, imagine suppressing reporting because you're afraid of how it's going to impact the perpetrator because the laws are so crazy. You know what I mean?
That's a hell of a decision for a little kid to make, or a family for that matter.
Well, I worked with a client one time, and she told me that when she was 14, she had sex with her 25-year-old boyfriend, obviously illegal, and she never reported him because she didn't want him to go to prison forever.
I've heard stuff like that too.
So I'm like, okay. I mean, anecdotal, be it that as it may,
I'm done.
It nevertheless is the truth.
Right.
I'm done being afraid.
Right. Same
I'm
stories.
done worrying about if my children are going to be taken from me. I just want to be a normal person. I just want to live my life. I've paid enough. And there's a lot of people just like me. It's really time to stand up.
Hi, Patty. My name is Shauna. I was wondering if there would be any time possible that I would be able to actually maybe sit and talk with Representative Cockcroft. I'm a registered sex offender in the state of Oklahoma. Recently, the laws have completely changed my life and my children's life. I don't know when he would be available to meet. Do you have any idea? He keeps his own calendar. Okay.
Well, can you talk to him then?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Patty. Bye-bye.
I guess keep trying.
Hey, Carol, this is John. How you doing? I'm fine. Listen, in anticipation of me coming there Thanksgiving, are you in touch with my boys ever? The reason I'm asking, I wonder if it would be appropriate to let them know, either tangentially or directly, that I'm going to be in Conroe during the Thanksgiving holidays. I haven't seen them Yeah, I haven't seen.
How would you let him know tangentially? He may or may not be around.
Yeah. Start a rumor that he's coming to town.
So I'm guessing, poor old guy, as we were making fun of his use of words, I think we missed that his boys don't want to see him.
It's tough.
So Lauren's Kingdom. This looks like a. Oh, it's a book.
Lauren wanted to
That
tell
Lauren book
someone
wrote.
about the way she was feeling and the way the babysitter had touched her, but she was scared. On the count of 3, you can all do it. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Stop! That's not safe! Oh,
Anyway,
I think they didn't hear you over on Madison
Didn't
Avenue.
just rape her. She didn't just beat her.
If you're choking back tears and your heart's filled with fears, you know very well that It's okay to tell. Her father held his precious daughter in his arms. He looked into her eyes as tears rolled down his face. The mean green ogre babysitter will never hurt you again. I promise.
So this looks like a book geared towards kids to safely introduce them to the idea of what sexual abuse looks like and how to respond to it. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yep.
Years in Honduras. I know every family.
This is
member.
actually probably a good idea.
How hard would it be to write a book like
Yeah,
that?
I don't know. Yeah. I kind of want to read that book now.
You okay? Maybe offensive.
People want to shield their
He's my
kids
mentor.
from sex,
He
and
has taught me a tremendous amount.
I don't know how to navigate
But we
that.
don't always agree on policy.
He believes that we need to do all that we can to restrict predators. And when we started, that's what I was doing too.
When I went back and got my master's degree, I realized if you don't work to prevent sexual abuse through education and awareness, then you can't
Look at that
be effective.
jacket.
To
That
be
better
able
be
to
pure mink.
educate, you have to understand. So I still interact with predators where Dad will not.
This is Lauren Book talking.
She interacts with them.
We tell ourselves
Yeah, I don't know how.
that the people to whom these laws apply are monsters. They're the other. They're not us. We can identify who they are, get them away from us.
Prosecutors asked the judge to give Brian David Mitchell the maximum penalty.
The reality
Oh, that's the dude who
is
kidnapped Elizabeth Smart,
recidivist
isn't it?
sexual
Yeah,
violence
yeah.
is a tiny portion of the problem of sexual violence.
Didn't you once upon a
Most
time get invited
sexual
on
offenders-
Elizabeth Smart's podcast?
Yeah.
And
Takes
you blew
place
it?
in houses,
Basically.
in drunken parties, on dates, with coaches,
The
with
unpublished.
religious leaders, among families.
That is true.
These are people who are not visibly
Oh,
monsters.
the Duggars. That guy.
In
That's
fact, they
right.
are among us. They're us.
Allegations of
Harvey
sexual assault by
Weinstein, Charlie
Lauren
Rose, and Matt.
claims that the encounter was consensual.
Oh, Bill Cosby.
Normal
Granddaddy
people
of them all.
who are guided by screwed up values, by permissive societal
Duke dudes?
messages.
I don't know who that
There's
was.
Trump.
The real harm in those kind of laws is that they acquit us as a society of our deeper obligation to change the mores, to change the values that allow sexual violence to flourish. That's what we really ought to be working on, not some foolish laws about Halloween candy or license plate color. We have limited resources, and every $5 million that we spend on this program is $5 million that we're not spending on primary prevention, changing attitudes, and tried and true supervision. and
That's what we're
treatment
going
of
there.
sex offenders.
Damn straight.
There are choices that we're making.
You cannot broad brush this issue. And the minute that you do so, you will create policies that are dangerous, that cannot be enforced. That's where I try to temper some of where Dad comes from. What can we do to create smart policy to, again, do what? Not be punitive, to keep kids and our communities safe.
What does your dad say to that?
I don't know what he would say to that. He would probably tell me to lock them up and throw away the key and that there's no use for them back out here in the community.
Pretty much said that the whole time.
Yeah.
These people need to be put away till they're too old to walk. I told you before, I don't try to be what I'm not.
I mean, the dude's got conviction.
I don't try to be anything other than
respect a
white.
lot of lawyers coming from. It's just, damn, he's.
Which of these
judgment is tainted a bit.
Would have been most effective in protecting your daughter?
You know, most of the laws that we have passed would likely have done nothing to protect my daughter.
What? Honest answer. I didn't expect him to say that.
But I believe had we properly educated my daughter on how to be safe, had we properly trained her on safe touch and unsafe touch, had we properly trained her about secrets and that no secret is forever.
Pause it real quick.
Yeah.
So
I am absolutely convinced that the abuse would have been short-lived.
You keep on telling.
He's acknowledging, he's aware that the laws that he's passing necessarily wouldn't have done anything to stop what happened to his daughter. It's almost as he's acknowledging that maybe some of these were made because they feel like it's the right thing to do.
Well, so is it all just revenge? You just want to be retributive? Is that? Jeez, God, why can't I say that word?
Yeah, you added too many syllables. Yeah, that's kind of what it sounded like. But I mean, he went on to qualify it and said that, basically education, awareness, which might not be wrong, but yeah, it did kind of sound like he was acknowledging that this is a bit of a get back.
I mean, the only case you could make, which maybe he makes, maybe he doesn't. So if I'm speaking from his perspective, is that if these laws had been in place for 10 years prior, that her abuser would have been so scared of the consequence that she would not have done it, which is not a case he made though.
That's
at least the most
rational to prove also, but yeah, that's
the most rational deterrence theory type argument you could put on there. Yeah.
Okay.
Until you are heard and helped.
It may not have prevented that first act or that second act, but my daughter would have told. My daughter would have figured it out. My daughter would have told. My daughter would have told.
Awareness.
She would have told.
Even a cat, she feels sad. Even a cat is scared. Even the cat is scared.
He's an angry dad who had to watch his kid endure a tremendous amount.
You're angry for how long, though?
But I'm that kid who had to endure a tremendous amount, who doesn't want that to happen to other kids.
We have been victims of a horrific crime. I got very angry. It was eating away my insides, just the absolute fury. It was like acid inside of me.
Jacob Wetterling's manga again.
But I can't live in that world. I can't live in the world of exploitation and anger and rape and assault and the language that just will eat you alive. I have to focus on the vision, the world we were trying to build for our kids, the world that Jacob knows. Jacob was good and fair. And I refuse to let the man who took Jacob take anything more from me. You can't take away my world.
Yeah.
You can't take away my belief that there's more good people in the world than bad, and it's time for good people to stand up and build a better environment for our kids.
Man, what a great outlook on that.
Lady's on fire.
And that's it. I mean, how long has it taken her to get there, though?
No survivor talks about. None of us. Every survivor that I've ever talked to has this little, deep, dark hole inside of us that we feel that monster exists. That there is a Waldy in me that if I'm not careful, she's going to come out and she's going to hurt another kid.
Can we get a where are they now on that babysitter?
I've spoken to family members who have
Nowhere
to give
good.
up children
Yeah.
because they cannot live in a home with a sex offender father. Or they have to sell their home, they have to move, they're living in cars and are very, very, very angry. So there is a place for anger. There is a place where that has to fire you along
Oh, she got the
to
meeting.
get something done.
Did she? Or is this
And
just
the
some
only
B-roll of her
reason
walking through
that we're sitting
Congress?
here today is because a young lady who had no voice and felt
Be a different
invisible for so long was tired and pissed.
Nah, she got her meeting. This poor
People are
guy.
afraid of predators. People are scared, and they should be. The aftermath is catastrophic and cataclysmic. Unless we're putting them in prison and throwing away the key, they're getting out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're going to live in your neighborhoods.
Yeah.
They will be there. We need to be smart. We need to be strategic about the way that we do things.
Miss
to
Book's coming around.
create a more effective system than what we currently have.
Okay, well then, so wait a minute.
But we can't be driven by fear.
Before it was feeling like she was contradicting. So there must have been some evolution in this time period, yeah?
That's, yeah. Yeah, for sure.
That it?
Credits.
Is it credits? John Cryer is off supervised release and free to leave Oklahoma. That was our old man. Or young man. He is required to register in any state he moves to, of course.
Standard.
Clyde's daughter introduced him to a woman who has become his fiancée. Man, good for you, buddy. Less than 30 days after our final interview, a neighbor found his photo on the registry and notified his landlord. He was given a 7-day notice.
That
of
dude
eviction.
can't win.
I know. Judy Cornett still runs Predator Patrol. Still? Wow.
They saw what we were doing. They were pleasantly surprised, tickled pink. Check our car. They're from Metro.
Her son is expected to spend 17 more years in prison. Lauren's kids secured $3.8 million in state funding last year, making it one of Florida's most supported
You know, she's
charities.
decided this is the next place she wants to go. It's parents' responsibility to do everything and anything they can to support what their kids' dreams are. So.
And we're actually filing our papers in the next 15 minutes, and so it's official. It's officially official. I'm running for Senate.
Oh, she's running for Senate too, huh?
That's a powerful family.
Lauren is unopposed in her race for the Florida State Senate. Oh, okay.
Did she get it?
Is that my beautiful, precious baby girl?
That turned into a zombie.
Shauna remains one of 800,000 Americans on the sex offender registry. She will be on the registry for life. There it is.
Roll credits.
Wow. We finished her.
Yeah.
You know, the one thing it's kind of weird because I mean, neither you or I do a whole lot of work with victims, right? And or survivors, whatever you know, kind of work that you're in. And I suppose on my philosophy is I just don't know if you can do really good work working with both populations, you know. Not saying that they haven't. I'm saying my personal opinion is I probably wouldn't do well with both. Kind of
it at least takes acknowledging that you might have that bias that would prevent you from being effective. At least being aware that you.
I think your cognitive and emotional energy gets pulled in a couple of really stark directions, right?
Yeah.
So, but I have learned enough from victim therapists and that's why that term exists, why they've gone from victim to survivor. In other words, like they are not allowing their lives and how they conduct themselves moving forward to be dictated by the events of the perpetrator. And
like Miss Book, she's living her life now.
Right. But you can make the opposite argument for her dad. So like he, and he's a secondary victim for sure. I don't want to undermine his role, but like dedicating his life towards some of these laws and making it more difficult for sex offenders released to the community to be, successful based on some of these. I mean, you could easily make the argument that this is still the driving force behind his existence. Mm-hmm. In other words, a perpetrator abused a child, and you use that as your life inspiration to make decisions in your life. I mean, I'm not saying that your decisions aren't benevolent, but seems like a weird way to, to dictate what you're going to do for the rest of your life.
I know.
Like my primary inspiration as a father was gleaned from somebody sexually abusing my child.
Damn, when you put it that way, it's
I mean, just think of
like
all
an unhappy existence.
Right. Think of all the other sources of inspiration to be a good parent and to leave a mark, or a legacy before you leave. And your choice is somebody sexually abused a child. That's my inspiration.
He's clearly content with that, but he's making just, a few minutes ago, we pointed out that he's acknowledging that the laws that have come about as some of his life's work don't necessarily effectively reduce recidivism, at least not in the case of what happened to his daughter. He's acknowledging almost that his efforts might not make the dent in recidivism that he wants to, yet he's still being driven forward, pushed on by this vengeance type motivation to do it.
So, I guess
I feel for him.
I do. I feel bad for him. I mean, I don't think he has enough insight yet to kind of recognize it that way. Although, okay, so now that this information exists, and one thing therapists love to do is like show videos like this in a group type setting, no criticism, by the way. I'm just saying they do that. How would you suggest framing this to a client, one of our clients who committed a sex offense and witnessing this, to just not get like in give up mode? You know what I mean? Like, how is this information that, the public doesn't like you, they have an unfavorable opinion of you, and statistical likelihood is that you're going to violate, you're going to return to prison, but it's not going to be for a new sex crime. It's going to be because they've made rules that regulate your life to the degree that life is so difficult that you will eventually slip up and go back to prison. How can you reframe that information for somebody trying to recover from having committed a sex offense and now transitioning to the community?
Off the top of my head, I think the way the documentary was structured allows for that. Here's something. I just had this talk with a guy today. He's real concerned about public perception. He's feeling stigmatized. My life's over. Who's going to ever hire me? Who's going to ever love me? How do I tell people? And there's this thing I say to clients that I think this documentary helps capture. I said, look, man, if you and I get a couple clipboards and we go down to Walmart in the parking lot, like the people that do impromptu surveys, and we start polling people that are coming in and out of the store, asking them, hey, what are your opinions on sex offenders? What kind of sentences should be imposed? Would you ever want to live next to a sex offender? If you were an employer, would you ever hire one? And ask them those types of questions. Across the board, we're going to get some pretty stereotypical answers. Lock them up, throw away the key.
Yeah.
They
kill them.
Some should be killed. Yeah. Killed, castrated. I'd never, they're scumbags, monsters, worst people ever. Would get those answers. And then I say, it's because in their mind, when you say sex offender, they have a monster pictured. They have an idea in their head. Like this
Freddy Krueger.
Yeah. They have the archetypal image of Freddy Krueger in their head, right?
Yeah.
Dude in the bushes with the duct tape and I guess the claws on his hand.
I hope not.
Yeah. And then I say that, but like when somebody sexually offends and somebody within their own family or a coworker that they've known and they find out, when they start to learn who an individual is, and I'll tell the client when the same individual that we pull coming out of Walmart and ask these questions that give us the stereotypical answers, if that very same person gets to know you, the client, over time, they're going to have some cognitive dissonance. In their head, they're going to have this image of Freddy Krueger in the bushes with the roll of duct tape. And then they're going to have you. And you are a living, breathing human that has obvious strengths, and you got a great, personality, and, here's some good things about you. And the image they have in their head of sex offender doesn't mesh with you. And what you'll find is that a lot of, not all, but a lot of people in society will grant you an exception. And they'll be like, well, I still hate sex offenders, but you're different and you're getting your life together. And I like that you're going to treatment. And you know what? As long as you don't do it again, you're not like the rest of them. So, and they'll make an exception. That's what people kind of do in their heads. And I feel like this documentary allowed for that. And that when they were showing Book's point of view, they were talking about things on the macro level, legislation, protests, marches, whatever it is. And then when the documentary would cut to individual people's lives, it was hard not to develop a sympathetic view of the individuals in there. And I say that the way the documentary allows you to see the human side of these various people, and then contrast that with the macro level view of sex offenders, is much the same way that you, the offender, are going to experience that with the people you love, that will see that you're not that, but you will face societal stigma probably from here till the end of time.
Right.
That's what I say.
No, that's a good reframe. So, I mean, in short, if I could sum that up, on a macro level, you're not going to change hearts and minds. Anytime soon, if ever, for that matter. But on a micro level, my individual connections that I have in my life, people are willing to give me a second chance based on personal perceptions of what's happening in the here and now and the person that I've become. And I'm not defined by the worst thing that I ever did.
That's
right. So, and if you get caught up in the idea that on the macro things are never going to change, you quickly lose hope and resort back to unhealthy coping strategies, which is why you got here in the first place.
Exactly.
Good. I like that.
Awesome.
So pretty good place to end.
Yeah, dude.
Dude, I'm glad.
Was that 3 parts?
That's 3 parts.
Yeah.
We got to get better at our reaction videos. A, get better. B, never do them again. Or C, find shorter ones.
That I actually want to get the answer to that. I was going to suggest C, but maybe if the listeners can weigh in. So what is it again?
Or D, all the above.
Yeah. So
I'd say A, get better.
A, get better at it. B, never do it again. Or C, find shorter 20-minute clips.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
There you go. Okay.
Please weigh in.
I want to hear from you guys.
Yeah.
All right. See you guys.